Mr. Mesić. First of all, had you heard of the events that occurred in Ahmići in April of 1993?
Saznao sam da je to veliki zločin gdje su čak i stradala djeca. Pitao sam Matu Bobana da li on šta o tome zna. On je rekao da je sve ta događanja isprovocirao nekakav oficir Englez, a da su oni nešto utvrdili, ali ne dovoljno. Pa sam ga pitao što su utvrdili, tko je učinio taj zločin. I Boban mi je rekao da oni imaju čvrste dokaze da su to počinili ljudi u crnim uniformama. Onda sam ga ja pitao, dobro, ti mene nisi razumio, Mate, ja nisam pitao koja je boja uniforme bila, nego tko je nosio uniformu. Kaže, taj dio nismo utvrdili, a to su mogli biti i Srbi. Jasno je da se Srbi tamo nisu mogli pojaviti i da je očito da mi ili sam nije znao ili nije govorio istinu.
The first things Colonel Stewart did were to complain about the events of Ahmići and what exactly was going on and what was the explanation of these events. The three reasons given were Serb extremists, Muslims who had infiltrated the pocket, or Muslims dressed in HVO uniform. The only thing I conclude from that was that there was an acknowledgement that HVO uniforms were on the spot in Ahmići and had been there. Otherwise, why mention the HVO uniforms? Frankly, all three reasons I found ridiculous, and I said so. I said this is just impossible.
Since then, Mr. Mesić, have you heard whether anybody has been prosecuted by the Bosnian Croat officials for the massacres at Ahmići?
Ne, nisam čuo.
Up until 2000, they were not very cooperative. I mean, the documents, in fact, were not being turned over. And in fact, there were instances that we documented later where documents were being moved around, documents were being concealed. We'd find instances where we thought there was an archive somewhere, and we would send a team there to find it, and then it was gone. And then we found documents years later that said the documents had just been moved even a couple of days before because they knew we were coming.
The state of Croatia embarked on an active program to conceal evidence from the prosecutor. In other words, they took documents that were from the HVO in Bosnia and the archives, and they secreted them in Zagreb. They moved them, even though we were trying to secure them. So they did that. When I asked the Croatian authorities for the location of those archives, they didn't know anything. Of course, they were hidden. As I recall, they were in the Ministry of Defense or the Ministry of the Interior.
It was really an entire effort, an entire organized effort to present a particular story, a party line that was being put forward. And there were even rules. There were even a set of rules that if you were going to play the game, if you were going to be part of the team, you had to obey certain rules. And for example, rule number one was you will not implicate or incriminate the interest of Croatia. You will not implicate any other co-accused. I mean, there were actually written rules as to what the accused and the legal teams were supposed to do or not do if you were going to be part of this system and receive the support, from the Croatian government and others.
Second of all, Croatia infiltrated the tribunal in an attempt to compromise our efforts. They had an operation called OH Haag, where they had their agents inside our institution, and I can tell you, although I can't prove it, I can tell you that my colleague Greg Kehoe had a document that was a very important document for us. It was the situation reports of the Cheshire Regiment, which was the UN British regiment that was located in central Bosnia, in Vitez. And my colleague Greg Kehoe had annotated that thick document. It was about this thick. He'd spent a year studying this document. And one night it disappeared from his desk. And it was stolen in The Hague, in our office. And I reported that to the security. But shortly after it was stolen, the defense seemed to have a great deal of knowledge about the contents of the Cheshire Regiment documents before they hadn't received them. I can't, I go into speculation beyond that, but I have no doubt that the Croatian OH Haag was engaged in trying to find out who our witnesses were. I believe they stole the document from Greg Kehoe's desk, one of their agents, and those were part of the problems that we had to face as prosecutors in terms of prosecuting the cases in central Bosnia. We had an active state, a state actively trying to subvert us.
And they were handled very discreetly by a few people in the office. I do know that there were staff members who were escorted out of the building, who were let go because it was found that they had perhaps been providing information to people on the outside or taking documents out of the office. I do know that that happened, but I can't tell you the details of it.